Children are allowed to make mistakes. When David Beckham talks about the hardest thing about parenting in the age of social media, David Beckham didn't say that as a football legend. He said it as a father opening a statement that silenced the entire studio. Children are allowed to make mistakes. David Beckham's words resonated in the studio of CNBC's Squawk Box on the morning of January 20th. Not in a loud voice, not dramatic, but it made the conversation about social media, usually full of statistics, warnings, and jargon, suddenly very human, not a media tactic. Not the speech of a global ambassador, but the simple truth of a father of 4 children growing up in the digital age. When the man accustomed to the spotlight chooses to talk about the darkness, David Beckham is no stranger to the media. He has lived more than half his life under the spotlight, newspaper headlines, and the unforgiving judgment of the public. That's why when he talks about the dark side of social media, people listen. We've talked a lot about the negatives David shared on the show, especially the things children today are exposed to. And frankly, they can be very dangerous, double quotes, not dangerous in an abstract way, but dangerous to mental health, to a sense of self-worth, to childhoods being shortened by screen time for children growing up in 2 worlds. David Beckham and Victoria Beckham have 4 children. They grew up in a globally famous family, where social media is not just a tool for entertainment, but also a part of public life. David doesn't shy away from it, he admits. His children have also made mistakes on social media, thoughtless posts, moments judged too quickly. Times learning to be quiet after saying too much, but instead of hiding or denying, David chose to speak his mind. They're allowed to make mistakes, a viewpoint not easily expressed. In a world where parents are expected to perfectly control their children, David Beckham's statement sounds counterintuitive. Children are allowed to make mistakes. That's how they learn. He says this not as a parenting theory, but as a learned experience. Sometimes, David continues, you have to let them make those mistakes, not abandon them, not give up, but stand close enough to guide them, but far enough for them to take responsibility for themselves. Social media, a double-edged sword that no one can take away from children. David Beckham doesn't deny the positive power of social media. He himself is using his personal platform to do what he believes is meaningful work. UNICEF Global Ambassador Razorbound World. It's the best tool to reach people, he says. But the problem, according to David, isn't the platform itself, it's the way it's used, and the reasons for using it. The lesson David Beckham teaches his children. Not don't use it, but what to use it for, instead of banning it. David chooses to teach. He says he tries to guide his children to use social media the way he does. Not posting to be liked, not posting to prove their worth, not posting because of the pressure of comparison, but posting with purpose. You have to teach your children why they use social media. David emphasized a seemingly simple statement, yet something many families are overlooking: the first mistake. A moment no parent can avoid. No one explicitly stated what mistakes David Beckham's children made. And he doesn't need to, because any parent understands: the first mistake was posting something to private, the first time being publicly criticized, the first time realizing that words on social media don't disappear. These are lessons no book can teach. A father who has been judged his whole life understands the price of mistakes. David Beckham was once a perfect icon, and he was also once a target of criticism. He understands the feeling of being judged by the whole world in just one moment. That's why he doesn't want his children to grow up in fear of being right from the start. They need to be allowed to make mistakes, he said, because otherwise they'll never dare to learn. Quotes. The conversation wasn't just for celebrity parents. David Beckham's statement quickly went viral. Not because he's Beckham, but because he touched on a shared concern of an entire generation of parents. How to protect your children without stifling them. How to keep your children safe in the digital world while still allowing them to be themselves. How to teach your children responsibility without scaring them. UNICEF Global Children of Adults as a UNICEF ambassador. David Beckham sees the issue on a broader scale. Social media doesn't just affect his children. It affects millions of children in places where parents don't have enough time, knowledge, or resources to guide them a message that isn't sugar-coated. The world isn't safe. But children need to be prepared. David Beckham doesn't promise that if you teach them right, they won't get hurt. He just says one very true thing: pain is part of learning. Mistakes are part of growing up. The important thing is whether parents are there. In conclusion, when a simple saying becomes a reminder for society, children are allowed to make mistakes. It's not about covering up. It's not about being lenient, but rather, it's a reminder that before being social media users, children are human beings. Before being objects to be controlled, they are individuals learning how to live. And perhaps the bravest thing about parenting in this day and age is not about preventing children from all risks, but about staying there for them after they stumble. We have to talk about this. David emphasized not just about the negative aspects, but also about how to do better. A message that doesn't sugarcoat things. A message that isn't sugar-coated. The world isn't safe. But children need to be prepared. David Beckham doesn't promise that if you teach them right, they won't get hurt. He just says one very true thing: pain is part of learning. Mistakes are part of growing up. The important thing is whether parents are there. In conclusion, when a simple saying becomes a reminder for society, children are allowed to make mistakes. It's not about covering up. It's not about being lenient, but rather, it's a reminder that before being social media users, children are human beings. Before being objects to be controlled, they are individuals learning how to live. And perhaps the bravest thing about parenting in this day and age. Is not about preventing children from all risks, but about staying there for them after they stumble.